I'm King Link, and it's sort of the first week of March, which means it's time for the Humble Choice March 2023 review. I've played all 8 games on stream for an hour apiece, I did a little research, and now I'm here to tell you how they are, how they play, and who's going to enjoy them. I do want to remind people I am looking at these games in a $12 bundle, so this is more intended to see if they're worthy if they are on sale. Let's get started with what's already on screen.
Game on.
Biomutant, a post-apocalyptic world to explore. Biomutant is another in that style of open-world exploration game, usually talked about with Breath of the Wild and Immortals Phoenix Rising. There's a large map, multiple things to see and do, and a tight combat system that focuses on dodging or blocking attacks that help ramp up damage. The world is interesting to look at in the first hours, and the characters and world are unique. At the same time, the world building, and especially the naming conventions, can be a bit too cutesy. There's also dad jokes that I enjoyed, but it's not going to be for everyone, and the dialogue is done in animal noises and then the narrator translates over it. I've heard from people that I really trust that the game starts strong and becomes blander over time, but after the first hour, I am still engaged. Pick this up if you want a large open world to explore and find these characters interesting. I was initially turned off by some of the names of the items, but after I got used to the world and the writing style, I am ready to play more. The large enemies and the interesting environments at least got my attention, and there are a decent amount of systems in the game that you can play with. Jurassic World Evolution 2. Just like the movies, they made a sequel. Jurassic World Evolution 2 is a sequel to the title that was in Humble Choice in May 2020. Now the sequel is also in the choice. Once again, you're in charge of running the park, building it up, managing guests and attractions for them, and dinosaurs. A whole lot of dinosaurs. The same park management is still here with many of the same tasks. There is a new campaign mode and 6 additional scenarios based on the movies. Though one of the 2 big issues is the main campaign mode, which is only about 5 or 6 hours long. The Chaos Theory scenarios will take you longer, and that's where you're really going to be able to stretch your legs with this game. Also, I probably would recommend playing the original title over this one, as I feel like that story is a little more fleshed out and teaches players more of the functionality of the game. The new title does have more dinosaurs and more features, but if you already have the original, you'll do fine playing that first and finding out if you really want more. Pick this up if you like dinosaurs, Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, or just Planet Zoo. There's a huge blast of nostalgia for me in this game, and revisiting the original movies with Jeff Goldblum's voice did get me quite giddy. The first time I played this game, I actually focused on campaign mode a bit too much, but this time playing Chaos Theory definitely made me realize there's a lot of magic with this title. Edge of Eternity. It's an indie Final Fantasy, which kind of sounds strange. Edge of Eternity is made by Midgar Studios. It was kickstarted in 2015, put into early access in 2018, and fully released in 2021, with continued post-release support until the end of 2022, at least so far. This is done by a team that lists only 13 developers in the credits, and the game is supposed to have 50 hours of gameplay. This is essentially a major title done by a tiny team that tried to aim for a lofty goal of something like Final Fantasy. For the size of the team, this is a massive accomplishment. This is a huge undertaking, and it seems like they delivered an enormous game. The combat feels interesting, and there are a lot of different systems in the game. The world has a great feeling, you can explore it for quite a bit, and the story feels epically large at times, and it's pretty obvious there's going to be a lot to unpack here. But that also can be a problem. The opening has been modified from the original release, and it can be a little inconsistent at times. Like the party feels really bad about one character who dies in a cutscene, and ignores the next character who dies inside of a battle. The initial release actually had a cutscene of their reactions after that, which was probably cut for pacing, but it's just so jarring and callous now. This is a game that took 7 years to fully realize, and there's a varying quality over that time, but that's also to be expected. Pick this up if you want a JRPG, especially if you want one from a smaller studio. When the writing grabs you, it has this interesting premise, but you also hear odd lines at times. The combat is going to be the star here, and the world feels like a place that I actually do want to explore. Hero's Hour, a fast-paced version of Heroes of Might and Magic. In Heroes Hour, players take a champion who belongs to one of 12 races and fight for supremacy against other characters, whether human or computer controlled. This is based on Heroes of Might and Magic and turn-based strategy games, but in Heroes Hour the combat is real-time with units not really requiring micromanagement. Players can try to order units or cast magic, but this is more about the hero and unit management than focusing on the individual combat. At the same time, taking away the deliberate combat does lose something special in Heroes of Might and Magic style, and units all feel like they chugged a few pixie sticks before jumping into battle. There's sadly no campaign. That was the best part of Heroes of Might and Magic in my opinion. Instead, you play through randomized maps that you will also set up. The game promises a faster game for hot seat fans, but I still imagine this game will take quite a long time to complete. Pick this up if you like Heroes of Might and Magic or King's Bounty, and realize this game is more fast-paced in battles as you've seen on screen, but that can also be a benefit. However, this is a slow, methodical game outside of the combat, so players will ultimately have to be dealing with how to best use their units and resources. This also has a decent learning curve that's going to take quite a bit of time before players fully understand their choices in the game. Rogue Lords, an RPG version of Slay the Spire. Rogue Lords is going to look like yet another Slay the Spire title, and it borrows a lot from that game, especially the map design. However, Rogue Lords also does quite a bit differently. Instead of a card or a deck, players have 3 characters, and each uses attacks and skills based on who they are. Players are playing the devil, using disciples like Dracula, fighting against Van Helsing, and trying to increase the terror. And the design of the world is also quite good. It's, a very unique idea. Yet with this being a roguelite, RNG is going to be important, and there appears to be a focus on getting 3 of each skill to level it up, meaning players may have to invest in certain abilities with the hope of getting a payout that may never come. Also, Rogue Lord's tutorial talks a bit about each book, the game's form of a run, having 6 chapters, which sounds like a lot, but the actual tutorial was far faster than a typical run, I think. Pick this up if you want yet another roguelite. This is the issue I really have. I have so many other roguelites, I doubt I'd have space to add this to the rotation. Nothing here really jumped out at me as must play, but if you have more time or really like the idea of a more RPG style combat in a roguelite, as I've been showing here, check this out. It's an interesting twist on a common style. Demon Turf, a demonic platformer with a good set of collectibles and exploration. Demon Turf starts with the main character, a young demon girl named Beebs, having a dream where she and the devil trades insults, and then she learns about all her abilities. The controls here are tight, and the game has a lot to offer with great levels, a speedrun challenge per level, mini games outside of the normal progression, and a variety of locations from what I've seen. I want to say this is another top tier platformer, but honestly the art style isn't perfect, and while 90% of the game really does feel excellent, there's a lack of polish on the game, and that is sadly noticeable. This isn't an awful game, but it's also lacking something that made Hat in Time stand out. The writing though is good enough to keep me interested in the game and its characters. Pick this up if you want a platformer. Now, it may struggle to find a fan base, but this is a game I want to see a sequel to, and I'm really hoping the developers can give the next game that little extra polish this game needed. There's also a free DLC that actually came out on the 6th of March, and it's a much harder experience, probably more designed for the type of players who like to tackle Super Mario 64 ROM hacks, so if you really want a challenge, that's going to be for you. Honestly, I'm going to be playing more of the main game to see how it actually goes. Golden Light. What is this? Golden Light is a roguelite, but it's also a first-person horror game. It gets weirder than that though. You can eat any item, including maps and weapons. The game and the story are very jumpy, even having a few jump scares, especially with the focus on the mimics in the game. This is a strange game with an even stranger UI, though I will say after an hour, I can appreciate the amount of work that went into some of the art in the game. The thing is, the game feels like it's purposefully trying to annoy the player. The option menu isn't just bad, it's intentionally bad. The gameplay feels very random, the controls are annoying to use, and while it supports a gamepad, it requires a keyboard for important functionality. That's not even talking about how the gameplay itself just seems to frustrate me more with how it tries to frustrate me. I don't like horror, I just wish horror was the only thing I didn't like here. Pick this up if... Listen. don't pick this up, unless you love everything on the screen right now. This is well reviewed on Steam with 1,600 reviews, 90% positive, but I can't find anything to like about this. This just feels like the insane ramblings of a man who got other people to listen to him. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is still my review, and I can't recommend this game in good faith. Monster Crown, a seriously lacking Pokemon clone. Monster Crown is obvious about where it gets its inspiration from. Collecting monsters, forcing them to sign packs, leveling them up, and tackling other monsters. We're going to ignore how problematic some of that sounds. I think it might be intentional, but it is interesting to see an indie developer take on a famous franchise, especially with fresh ideas added to the concept. But Monster Crown just isn't that good. It's lacking a lot of the small pieces that really should be essential. Monsters don't make noise, for instance. While they have good animations, the swap out and death animations are missing, so the monsters just flash to another. The experience screen is awful and wasted. The interface and settings screen is buggy. There are so many pieces here that need work. This is almost 3 years old and made in Unity. There's really no excuse for some of these issues to still be in the game. Pick this up if you want an indie Pokemon game. It lacks the charm you might be hoping for though, and could be better, but for my money I'd probably just go play Monster Sanctuary or look at something like Temtem, which admittedly I haven't played, but I am interested in. I was looking forward to this game, but it feels like for me to return, someone's really going to have to force me, which is a shame. And that's the bundle. Now there again is no new Humble game collection released this month. Humble threw that out as a way to get their games out, but already they feel like they've run out of titles to release. They're also removing Hat in Time and Wild at Heart on March 15th, and they just announced they're going to be removing Fae Tactics and Archvale on April 19th. I'm not sure I understand the point of the Humble game collection anymore, but there's the update. As for this bundle, let's start by checking the price, and admittedly, that's probably an issue. Almost every game here has gone for less than the cost of the entire bundle, and even right now the prices are still pretty low. I don't even think there's a major sale going on, it's just the titles aren't that expensive. Golden Light has been bundled twice before, but that game has other stuff going on. As I played these games, I actually focused on a voice at the back of my head. Almost every title here is like an AA version or an indie version of a far more popular game, and they struggle to keep up. Biomutant could be linked to Breath of the Wild. Edge of Eternity tries so hard to be Final Fantasy. Rogue Lords is a slight variation on Slay the Spire. Monster Crown and Pokemon, of course. That's not to say this is a bad bundle, but it doesn't have that massive standout. As always, I don't try to look at the current value when I'm making my tiers, and I'm going to ignore it again, but I can't say this is a huge bounty of value. Speaking of the tiers, let's go through them. There are 4 of them. Misses, averages, strong contenders, and the games worth the full bundle price. At the bottom of the tier list, there's a single title in the misses. It's Golden Light. The game is overly popular on Steam with a huge number of positive ratings, which means there's a lot of wrong people on Steam. I've tried it. I don't think I can recommend this game to anyone, and at the end of the day, I feel like this game actively makes me not want to play it, which is the worst sin. Slightly worse than having an intentionally bad UI, which of course it does as well. The bottom of the average tier is Monster Crown, another title I struggled with, but this feels more like a developer who failed to live up to a lofty goal than a developer antagonizing the player. I wanted a Pokemon on PC, but this really isn't good enough, and there are better choices out there. Damn. The top of the average tier this month is Rogue Lords. It's a roguelite, but it's not one that stood out, which is becoming more of a problem as I find that I'm somewhat collecting these games. Good concept though, and I'm sure this will have fans. It's just such a crowded genre at this point. And this is how the tier list looks after 2 tiers. Still 5 games to go. Let's see what's in the Strong Contenders tier. Starting at the bottom of the Strong Contenders tier, we have Hero's Hour. This is a pretty interesting concept, and it's a revival of a style of game that has been missed, but it lacks a campaign mode, and I think that would have elevated it. The pixel art graphics are good, but feel a bit cheap unfortunately. I still like it though. At the top of the Strong Contenders tier, we have Biomutant. This feels like a mechanically sound game, and I am curious about playing more, but it also feels like I've seen the main pieces of the combat already. It's just going to be focused on that type of looter shooter with an open world style. Now we still have 3 titles to go, but let's take one more look at that tier list so far. Decent list, but let's see how the rest fall out. The bottom of the full bundle tier is Demon Turf. This game clicked with me. I have small nitpicks, but this is a game that really makes me want to play more, and I'm looking forward to playing more of it actually this month. The new DLC though is brutally hard, so even experienced 3D platformer fans will have something to challenge them. The middle of the full bundle tier is Edge of Eternity. It's an indie Final Fantasy, and for many people I'm sure that won't excite him, but to see anyone try to tackle a game of this size is impressive, and for such a small studio, honestly I'm just thrilled to have this in my library. That brings us to the game of the month. This month it's Jurassic World Evolution. As a fan of the original movies, there's a part of me that kind of just wants to go research dinosaurs right now. The first time I played the campaign mode, it dragged down my opinion, but now playing Chaos Theory this time makes me really want to see more of it. I'm hoping to get a chance to do that soon. And that's where we're going to leave the bundle. Now I'm personally quite pleased I actually got Edge of Eternity, which is a game that was on my wish list, and I have picked up Jurassic World Evolution 2 previously. But if this isn't for you, let me put out one other choice. Humble Heroines just came out on Wednesday of this week, March 7th, and there are 5 great titles I've already covered that I can tell you about. A few in humble choice, but if you've missed them, it's a great time to fill out that library. I played Sable on Game Pass, it's extremely colorful. Call of the Sea is an excellent puzzle game that I actually finished. Dreamscaper is a roguelite that is somewhat similar to Hades. Control is an excellent adventure game that is sort of based on the SCP mythos with some amazing ray tracing graphics, and Hellblade is brilliant. I'm looking forward to its sequel this year. With that said, we come to the end of this monthly discussion of games. Thank you for hanging out and listening to me prattle on about these titles. I hope it's been helpful for you. I certainly enjoyed playing them. I'll be back with a second video this month. Probably, maybe, supposedly. Stay tuned for that. Consider subscribing if you haven't already and ringing that bell so you're one of the first to see that new video, whatever it becomes. If you want to help me out or the channel, liking, sharing, or commenting on this video is always appreciated and the best way to do so. If you want to hang out and chat about anything, check the Discord link that's going to be popping up on your screen or in the description. And if you want to see more from me, well, here's some more videos to check out. See you next time.